So this is tutorial number 16 in how I make models for Trainz, and for this one I'm just going to talk about the config.txt files that you need to have in each of your models. If we look in Explorer, File Explorer, here's my documents folder, and you can see here Trainz projects, TS12 new models, Trainz, and this is the Joffre World War I 2-foot gauge narrow gauge locomotive. This is what it comprises. We've got the body in a folder, and this is all of, there's the mesh that makes up the model, and there's the shadow mesh, and there's a number of ways in which you can make the shadow. I would recommend, where have I got it? I think I've got it up here. Here we are. PEV soft image, is that it? No, quick shadows. There it is. That's the one there. But it's both by PEV. If you just type in quick shadows in Google, you'll get the website where those are available, and it's a Trainzer who's written a number of very useful utility programs for use in Trainz. Then what we've got here, apart from those, so that's the mesh, that's the shadow. Then we've got some BMP files, so those are being used for opacity. Remember that, although that one's used for reflection, that's one I've shown you before. In tutorial 7b, that's used for opacity, and these two I think are used for similarly for opacity. I can't remember that. Yes, it is, because it masks out the black on a rectangular texture. For example, if we come down here to the WD texture and I load it up, there it is in just in simple texture file 256 by 64, and then the opacity file hides all of this black. So we just get the white letters WD with the arrow, and I just put that on the side of the locomotive. All of these files down here are the ones that control how the textures work, and I'm not really going to go into those in this tutorial because the one I'm going to cover is the Linton and Barnstable version of the Joffre locomotive, which is now running on the restored section of the Linton and Barnstable line, and all power to their elbow. And you'll see here we've got the config.txt file, which you have to have. That's what tells Trainz how to use your model. And then there's a number of TFX files, which are for the twinkles effects. And if I go back to new models and I come to scenery, then you'll see over here, and this is the first one I'm going to look at, is 70-ton shear legs. That's a scenery item, and in this I've got the mesh, I've got the config.txt file, which we're going to look at in a moment, and then I've got two textures, a panel and cobblestones, and they're pretty basic. Let's have a look. Panel 1, there we are. That's all it is, a very small 64 by 64 texture, just to show, just to use on texturing the shear legs and the cobblestones there. And if I double click on this, this is another one of those utilities which is really useful. This is showing me the final mesh that I made. This is a static scenery item for a shear legs that extended over docks in the 1870s, and I'm really fascinated by docks and dockside features, so I was very pleased to be able to make this. And that's all one texture. The only additional texture is down here somewhere where it's the cobblestones, those bits there actually, where this travels backwards and forwards. You see there's a little motor there that just pulls it backwards and forwards to raise or lower the shear legs. Okay, it's not animated though. So let's have a look at this config.txt file over here, which is for those shear legs. So it's made up of a number of items, and the way in which it's organized is pretty much standard, although you'll find for each different type of model that it's organized slightly differently, or it can be organised slightly differently. And if you're not sure about what to put in the config text, as you can see, I'm just using Notepad. It's a simple text editor. If you're not sure what to put in, just look up other people's, see what they've done, and if it works okay, then just copy the format, the list of things which they've done. So first of all, I put in the KU ID. That's the very specific model number that Trainz will identify, the individual. So that's my own one there, 169585 is me, and then that's the model number. And you have to use these types of brackets in this, and also the use of inverted commas is very important indeed, because the first thing you have to identify is the category into which your model falls. So the category, or kind, is kind scenery. And if we go into Firefox, I've got a Trainz, here we are, and tutorials, or is it here? Oh, under tutorials, no, that's Trainz Dev Wiki, Trainz Online. And I certainly recommend that you have this bookmarked, because then if you go in here you can search it. It's not brilliant, but, and the kind is all the different types of, is the data type, and it's defines in an asset, in assets, Config.txt files, and you can have a look through all those sort of things. So I'm not sure if there's actually, if it does actually list out all of the, yes, there's all the, at least I think it is. Yes, there's kind scenery, look, so you can look that up. And here's all a whole load of information, and this is tells you how to, all the things that you can include or not include, and there's an example of a config.txt file there for you to use. So if you're exporting, just get rid of that, if you're exporting a model of a piece of scenery, then it's kind scenery. Category region, pretty straightforward, mine's down there for UK. Category class, I can't remember the classes, but there again, they're all in the wiki, so you can look them up. Category era, well, I said 1930s, actually it's actually 1850s, but I've yet to see that really have any use. Anyway, there we are, username now in double inverted commas, as you can see, that is the name that's going to appear in the drop down list when we load Trainz. Yeah, under the scenery there's a description, doesn't seem to appear anywhere except for in the config text file. The new the Tane content manager replacement doesn't seem to display this, but I mean, you can always have a look if you want to in the config text of any file to see how it's described. And this one you can see came from Victoria Docks in London, and it was plans were published in the Engineer magazine, which you can actually get online. Light, I've always set it as 1, don't know if you set it as 0 what would happen. Trainz build, that's the version that TS12, I think Tane is a bit higher, but 3.5. And then we come to the mesh table, and these types of commas, the squiggly commas, I'm sure there's a correct name for them, and commas, brackets, those sort of brackets, strapping brackets, that's what they're called. There, your indent, these indents, and always the number of these strapping brackets opening has to be matched by strapping brackets closing. Otherwise, this won't be read properly. The whole config text file won't be read properly. So, mesh table tells Trainz this is what it's going to display, and you open the first, and that is the default display, which you always want. Then you indent for the next opening, so bracket within a bracket. Mesh, that's the mesh you've created, so that mesh there equals the name of this mesh here, and auto create, yes, this is 0 would be 0, yeah, sorry, a 0 would be 0, no would be 0, and yes would be 1. And make sure if you've got 2 open, 2 are closed after you've finished doing that. Author, that's me, there's the organisation, there's my contact email. There's actually, this is my old website address. I now use a different website, but and then a load of blurb, which I've always been putting in, but I don't think it actually means a thing. And then down here, thumbnails. You must always have a thumbnail, and it's missing from here. So obviously I haven't put the screenshot in. You should take a screenshot of the shear legs and insert it in there. Thumbnails, otherwise this will throw up an error, especially in tame. And it's again, open the strapping bracket. So that's the first thumbnail is under 0. You will start with 0 and then the next one will be 1 if you wanted several thumbnails. Open strapping bracket again. That's the image, that should be up here. That's the size that it should be, 240 pixels by 180 pixels in height. Then you close that down, and then the KUID table here, open and close. If I was attaching a dependency to this, to my shear legs, maybe a figure, somebody shoveling coal or something like that, or handling sacks, and I wanted it to always appear in my model, somebody else's model appearing in mine, then I would, well, I'd add an extra entry in here, and I would repeat the KUID of that dependency which I needed in here as well. So that's a very basic config text file, and everything that you need is there. That will make the shear legs appear, and they're static. They are just a scenery item. So now if I go to the train, which is the Joffrey axe, let's move over here a bit. You can see I've got my train stuff up the top here on my desktop, and there are some changes. So first of all, up here what I've done is I've got my username. That's what's going to appear in Trainz in the drop down menu. You can put in a company name if you want to. The description here is my description. This is one of my Trainz mates, Tom Stedman, who asked for this variant. It's now running on the restored Lincoln and Barnstaple section in North Devon and in England. And you can see how I've also given an attribute or to one or more twinkles effects and custom textures created by Rob Hill of Leicester routes and UK branch lines. Now that is a formulation which Rob Hill has asked should accompany any time anybody uses his twinkle effects. And I've used those twinkle effects to influence the way in which the smoke appears. This is a much more complex config file, as you can see. There's a lot more to it. And that's because there's a lot more to a loco. It doesn't just sit there, it actually moves. So first of all, we want to obsolete any previous versions, but there aren't any, so that's just opens and closes. It is an engine. That's its mass in kilos. I think that's right. There's the Trainz build number. There's the category class. You can look that up online. There's the region, category era. Well, for what it's worth, there it is. The engine spec, that is the thing that controls the way the engine works in Trainz, is somebody else's. That's their KUID there, look, and that's the particular engine spec. And it's quite legitimate to use other people's files which they've released, as long as they're freeware, and they haven't said no, don't use it. There's the engine sound, that's somebody else's engine sound. There's the horn sound, that's my own one that I recorded. And there's an interior. So that interior is actually, that is another mesh. That is a sound file. That is a sound file, this one. And this is like another config text file, but it's quite detailed specs on the performance from cylinders, pistons, all the rest of it. And the first thing you open up with is what smoke you've got. And this is this all describes the first smoke that comes out. It's coming out the chimney, the loco chimney. So open strapping brackets, and these are all the settings for that smoke. I think I was going to say copied, but sort of borrowed inspiration from other locomotives that I've seen installed, built-in locomotives, to get these sort of figures. And you don't need to mess about with them very much. Start period. If you see the sort of smoke that you want in your model on another model, look up that other model's config and frankly just copy it over. This is the most important thing. It's the attachment point on your mesh to which the smoke is going to attach, where it's going to originate, where it's going to come out. So that is obviously positioned in the middle of the chimney as you look down on it in top view. And you might find you have to rotate that attachment point 90 degrees to get the smoke coming out vertically, and then obviously it will sweep back as the loco moves. On quite a few of my early ones, the smoke came out horizontally towards the back of the loco, which is all very good, but it was wrong. So it needed fixing, and I think I've got most of them done. So that is all just one description of the smoke from the chimney. And it's a smoke naught. And I've got another one here, a smoke naught. And that adds different type of smoke to the same attachment point. Okay, to give just that extra little bit of, I hope, reality to the locomotive. And then we've got various other attachment points. There's the steam safety, that's a safety valve attachment. There's the mode. And now I'm using somebody else's file, safety valves TFX, which is available to use so long as you give Rob Hill his credit, and he certainly deserves it because they are excellent and I'd really recommend them. But of course it means you've got to have them here. What's that one using? Safety valves TFX, there it is. And if I double click on it, oh, look for an app. Oh, well, that's nice of them, isn't it? No, we don't want that, do we? Not going to worry about looking up in the App Store, but it's actually like a, it's like a Config.txt file. I don't know if I've ever bothered. You don't need to look at it or anything, you just use it. And smoke 3, there's the whistle, and I've used Rob's whistle, TFX there. And the cylinder drain cocks, and I've used his one there, look. Just referred to it there. And on each side, one on one side of one cylinder, one on the other side. And then smoke 3, so this is a leak. I've got a couple of leaks of steam leaking from pipes. I just thought it would look nice. And what's it called? Steam leak TFX. There it is there. Okay. So I'm referring to it here. And that's just the smoke. And now we move on to what we saw over here. So all of that has gone in between description and light. And now here we are back with light. Night mode, I tend to use lamp. Light color, don't muck about with it. Fonts, 0. And now we move on to, we have this little mesh table here, which was enough to handle our shear legs, our static model. But in a locomotive, it's going to need a lot more. And so here's our mesh table. It's still a default, because that's the one that we want to appear. And there's the mesh, geometric max body. So it's in that folder. That's the folder there. And then we put a slice in, and we're referring to that mesh. That's that one there. Auto create, and then effects. Effects are attachments which you're adding to the body of the your locomotive mesh. So the first one is a driver naught. So it's a driver figure. There's the attachment point. It doesn't appear over here, the driver figure, because it's another model. In fact, it's my model of the driver over here, and I'm telling it put that model at that point on this mesh, and it's an attachment. Okay, pick it all up. And then driver 1, that's driver 0. Driver 1 is the fireman, and I can position them separately. Sometimes if I got them together as the same model, then I would just have one attachment point, because you've got two figures there. And then we've got the shadow right at the bottom here. That's this one here. That's part of this, and that's the mesh there, and it's in this folder, and it's called shadow IM. There it is. Now, strapping brackets under mesh table. First one, indent default. Next one, that's 2 open. Indent mesh, auto create. Effects, indent again. That's 3 open. Driver, naught. Indent yet again. That's 4 open. Okay, so they're indented each time using the tab key, or you can space it if you want to, but I tend to use the tab key. Once that's done, you then close this one with its partner here, and then I need another driver, so I'm going to open another driver and close it again there, and then I'm going to see how they're all in line, and then this one. So that's now closing effects, and that's now closing the default mesh, the third one, closes the default mesh, and then so we've got default, and then we've got shadow, open, mesh, close, and then finally close the whole of the mesh table. It's an odd thing to get your head around, but once you do, it's pretty obvious. And 9 times out of 10, when my stuff doesn't load or it throws up all sorts of faults, it's because I haven't got the right number of brackets, that I've messed up the way these should be displayed. Then we move on to the bogeys, and it's just like the mesh table, the bogeys, and there's appears to be 2 bogeys here. Can't remember what axe looks like, but anyway, we open up, and the first bogey, which is 0, open up again, so we're 2 open. It's not reversed. Rotation permitted, side plate permitted, no. There's the bogey, and that is actually an invisible bogey, and it must be, that's a built-in invisible bogey, so it must be that I've only got a single driving bogey, but you do need a separate second bogey. So there's the second bogey. This is the actual mesh of the bogey, and it's a separate file, it's a separate model completely. If we go up to axe, and we go up to Trainz, and we go up to new models, bogeys, and where is it? Penryn, maybe that one. Can't remember. Let's look up its number. There's the 50341. No, it's 50331. I don't know what it is. Well, it won't be. It'll be because I've already installed it previously. It doesn't come up. These are just ones that I made new for the Joffrey axe, which is a variant of my WD one, which is already been installed. So that's an installed bogey. That's one of these, and it's a dependency. This model needs this. It's a dependency just as it needs this. So again, to put the bogeys in, this is the first one. This is actually an invisible bogey, and then the second one, this is the main driving bogey. Where you only have a driving bogey, you need to insert an invisible bogey which does nothing, basically. And then just coming down a bit more, it comes into familiar territory. You've got a thumbnail. Open all thumbnails. Here's the first one. Open that. There's the thumbnail. Close it and then close it. And make sure they balance. However many you open, make sure the same number close, and then that they're underlined. There's me. There's the organisation. That's my name. There's my email address, rather, and there's my old website address. And kind, and it's a train car. For some reason that's what it's called. Maybe that's the way they call it in Australia. It's a locomotive, and we've told it it's a locomotive. If we look up here, where are we? Ooh, way up here. Engine. What is that first one? Engine 1. 1 always means yes. If it was engine 0, it wouldn't be a locomotive. So coming right down, and then could the KUID table open, and then 0 to 7, that's 8 of them all together, and those are all of the things which I've mentioned up here. So that's the invisible bogey, that's my bogey, that's one of those is the engine spec, the horn sound, everything is repeated there as a list in a good time. And then finally, right at the bottom, whereas we had it right up the top of this one over here, we've got its individual KUID. So that's me, and that's the individual number of this model. And getting this right seems like a real daunting prospect. So my recommendation is to find a locomotive that is similar to yours, and frankly just borrow the config and use it as a guide to write your own. And the 9 times out of 10 problems with it are because you haven't got these strapping brackets balanced, open, closed. So if you've got no closing bracket, then it will carry on reading this as all part of the smoke 1 until it finds another closing bracket. It'll go all over the place. It won't work. It's as simple as that. So that's a very brief introduction into config text files. I would really recommend that you have a look at that. Wiki, and where are we? Tutorials. There it is. And so there's the online.ts 2009.com media wiki, index PHP, Trainz dev wiki. Frankly, if you type that into Google, I think, let's just go Trainz dev wiki. Let's see if that will find it. There you go. Couldn't be quicker. And content creation. There we are. And just use the search function there to find your way. There's lots of good stuff here. There's also sometimes you just get a page which says, oh, this page is going to get written, and it never has been. So, and this was back to 2009, so I can't see it being updated. So I hope that's been of use as an introduction into the way in which you use create these config text files. And once you've got the whole thing there together, look, you've got the body, you've got any effects, you've got the config, you've got the screenshot. That is then ready to be imported into Trainz using Content Manager. Depending on which version of Trainz you're using, either Content Manager or the new one for Tame. And Tame especially will show up all sorts of any sort of errors and missing dependencies, and it will help you root out what problem there is, and make sure you do get it into your own version of Trainz, of course, before you release it onto that great wide world out there. When your first freeware model hits the Trainz community. So I hope that's been of help. If you have any queries about any of these sort of things, do send them to me, put them in the comments, and I'll try and answer them if I know what the answer is. I may be just as bemused as you. Thanks. Please subscribe to my channel.